Well, it is 6 o'clock in the morning on May 3rd, and the coffee shop is open. So what are your thoughts? Oh, there goes our generator.
What's that? Why is it doing that?
Alright, generator's back up. So what are your thoughts today, Melissa?
I'm nervous. It's been a hectic few days. Spent almost literally every single penny we have, so I need to make a couple dollars today.
Yeah.
And I need the generator to work.
So I haven't recorded anything in like almost a week, and that's because we've been working on this. And work was busy. We worked on this thing till 10 o'clock every night. So I don't know how exciting that would have been. I probably should have videoed some stuff, but I didn't. So this is Whole Shot Coffee.
Come visit us.
It's all organic.
Everything's USDA certified organic. Yeah.
We're using Joe's syrups. There's our little logo. So I've been working on the girl now for almost 2 weeks off and on, trying to figure out what's going on with it. I have since, so this all happened when we were sailing here to Bay City. We were sailing along, everything was fine, and all of a sudden the motor started doing like what you hear now, that kind of a poppy bogging noise. We raised the sails, sailed in, then we started up, it ran fine, so enough to idle ourselves into dock here, and so that's kind of what we did. Since then, I originally thought it was a fuel problem, but I ended up cleaning the strainer basket, cleaning the carburetor, replacing the gaskets on the carburetor, and then what else did I do? I've changed the spark plugs, I've changed the coil, I've changed the points, rolled out all that stuff. I had my buddy come over and he put his multimeter type scan tool, put a scan tool on it. Didn't find anything too out of the ordinary. Even took apart the distributor to make sure that the advance is working. This has mechanical advance. That's all checks out. We then ran it, and we actually turned the distributor to see if we could get it to come out of this conundrum it's in while we're running it, and that didn't change it. So next thing we can think of is exhaust restriction or some sort of valve issue. So that's gonna be the next thing. So first, I guess, I don't know what I'm gonna do. If I can inspect the valves and see if there's something out of the ordinary there. I mean, maybe it broke a valve spring, that's a possibility, or pull the exhaust off. I did pull it apart. Let me show you this. So here's how the exhaust runs. It's a pipe inside of a pipe. This red hose here goes into the top. There's actually another hose that connects to the bottom of this pipe, and it goes along, and you can barely see it there at 90s and heads up this way. Then, okay, so it then heads up. You can see this flange right here, heads up into this lift system, and it exits through this black and blue pipe over here. This is where the water comes through, that pipe inside of a pipe deal, and then it goes up. You see, goes up to the top of that, puts water in this can, and that's your muffler. So I pulled it apart here to see what would happen. to see if we have an exhaust restriction, and there's a lot of carbon in it there, but there's no restriction. I mean, sort of restricted, but well, I ran the engine and it acted. So I ran the engine and it acted exactly the same. So that's not the problem. So that leads us to where we are today. Have the vacuum gauge on it. Try a couple different situations. See, you know, what the internet says about the vacuum gauge and what it's doing. So it sounds like basically it's getting enough vacuum in, but it just can't push it out to keep the vacuum going. So I've spent a lot of time down in there so far, so I am so glad the Northern Light has got a great big engine bay, because it would not be fun otherwise. So that's my update. That's what I've been doing. Okay, so I have the exhaust off now, and here's the water jacket for the head. And there's a little bit of stuff on there, but not enough to cause an issue. So I guess next is we have to go over here, pull off the carburetor, and back behind there, anyway, there's a little cover, and then that's where the valves are. So I'll head in there and see if there's, I don't know, broken valve spring, or hopefully something minor, but probably something broken. That would make sense. I mean, at this point, I don't really care what is wrong with it, because I'm going to fix it either way, but it's just been 2 very frustrating weeks trying to figure out what it is that's wrong with it. I can fix anything. It's just knowing what it is. That's like the worst part. So whatever it is, I'll buy 2 of whatever it is, so I can do this again down the road. I mean, yeah, this engine's old, but it's very simple. So the this vacuum gauge, I have to order one of those because I borrowed this one. But you know, that's your multimeter, or your scan tool rather. That's all you need, and you can troubleshoot anything. So no big deal. It's just an old tractor motor. So points and stuff aren't that big a deal. It will go to electronic ignition later, but right now this is all fine. So I'll check in when I get the carburetor and everything back off. Well, I'm at a loss again. I was just on the phone with my buddy, that smartest guy I know, mechanic, Matt. So we're at a loss again. According to the high-tech meter, it's a valve spring issue. So we're going to ponder this and maybe try to replace the valve springs. That's kind of what I'd like to do. That way I know. And they're relatively cheap. They're just a little bit labor intensive, finding the tool to change them without pulling off the head and stuff. So I guess I'm gonna wrap things up again and head home, make some dinner. Alright, well, what I have here is I use my torch and I lit the pipe on fire and then put some air in there. And at first there was hardly anything coming out of it, and then it got pretty smoky. It's a little smoky now, but you can see it got pretty darn hot here. And it's working its way along the top. And we got a little bit of smoke from up the other end. There's actually, right in here, it's collapsed. Looks like it froze. So this would be the low point. It froze here and it actually squished it together. So I'm getting it cleaned up. I'm going to send it off to the shop to get this welded, or I may attempt to braze it myself. We'll see here. But first I'm going to get it cleaned up, and then I have some oven cleaner. Spray it down with that, and get it ready for, I guess, to tear into it, see what's going on. All right, so the pipe is cut open, and hold it back up there again. And we have about 13 inches of collapsed pipe. So this is the low point. There was a drain right in here, I showed earlier, and it obviously didn't get drained. I can't believe the boat ran at all. Definitely got a lot of carbon out of it, more on the downward side of this for whatever reason, but yeah, I don't know. It's definitely not going to breathe very well. This is only 1.5-inch pipe. The book calls for 2-inch. Looks like the outside, this outside pipe is 2-inch. So obviously it ran for years with the 1.5-inch, so I'm not really concerned with that. But that restriction, it'll never be right again. So now it's off to the fab shop, because I'm not going to attempt that, because if I do it, these flanges will never line up again. So here's a quick illustration of what we had going on. So here is water inlet, goes to the raw water pump, goes into the engine block, comes out of the top of the head, goes through a thermostat. There's actually another hose that goes around and goes somewhere, but then there's a hose that goes along and goes into the exhaust. The exhaust is in that jacketed part, goes along, comes out at the top, then goes into the muffler can lift system thing. I don't really know how that works, but I'm assuming it's kind of like a reverse, what was that muffler called back in the day? Oil bath. So there's a 2-inch pipe there, so I'm assuming it goes in and then probably has to get sucked through the water, and then it goes out the back of the boat. The water line is about where this line is, so it's about there. So the motor is actually below the water line. But this allows, if there's a big wave, it can't come this way and come up and go back and swamp the engine. So, like I said, I don't know exactly how it works, but I think it's something along those lines. Kind of like an oil bath or that sort of system. I'm not really sure why this pipe is cooled either. I suppose the engine runs 140 degrees, so having this be up around 800 degrees would definitely be a really hot thing to have on board your boat. So maybe that's why they do it, or maybe it was easier to transfer the water this far. I don't really know. I see some people, they wrap it, or they came wrapped with some sort of exhaust tape, but when the engine's running, you can actually have your hand on this pipe, and the engine's warm, but this is never warm. So anyway, that's the original design, so that's what we're going to go with. I have a fab shop in town that said that they could do it on a rainy day, which we should have some of those coming up. There's also some retired welders I know of. I'm going to see if they can weld copper. I thought about doing it myself, but I've never welded copper. I suppose I could braze it, but it came welded, so I'm sure there's a reason behind that. Plus, like I said, the orientation probably won't be right if I do it. So this guy that I have in mind, he's an old fabricator at the, that's what he did for a living. So anyway, more about all this later.